20th. I am your host, Tom Kaczynski. Welcome to, I decided to call it Sunshine in Pineland, even though it's partly cloudy, which is why I can be out here with my dome open. But the chickens wanted to come out and crawl around in the dust bath, which actually is how they like to bathe. Water causes them certain problems. So I decided to come out here, although I think I'm going to have to turn my hat back on because I think the light's coming back at me. But I just wanted to come out here to talk to you guys for a few minutes, some different ideas on my mind, some updates and warnings about things I'm keeping an eye on, and I hope you're keeping an eye on as well. So I thank everyone who's a fan of the program. Thank you for all your support, the excellent feedback we've been getting on, Surviving the Fall of America. So thank you for that, especially for those of you who purchased through Amazon. If you're able to, please take the time, leave a review there. It makes a big difference. People want to know what you're reading, even if it's just one paragraph or a couple sentences. It goes a long way. I don't mind. And if you want to write a whole book report, Lord knows I'm not going to stop you. But remember, it's the internet. So, probably use Twitter rules with the amount of stuff you put on there. Also, for those who support the program through Venmo, CVC, PRV, PO Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine 04739, all the books, the Audible stuff, super chats here, and everyone who prays for us and sends us lovely messages, either at the aforementioned address, at New Albion at protonmail.com, or the internet community at telegramT.me/Atlantic Homeland. Okay, now I get to exhale. So, good morning. I should say good afternoon. Lord's blessings be upon you today. And so, let's go into the news a little bit and what I wanted to talk about. So, I was writing on, and I've been using my Twitter account just a little bit, and I was at Real Pinelander, if you want to follow me there. And one of the things they said is, the world is interestingly dividing itself into two coalitions. The degenerate materialists, that's us here in the West, that produce with the worst ideas ever and have all the wealth, and that we're kind of stuck behind the row of, not that we necessarily like that, and we tend to hate them for their moral views. And then what I'm going to call them, it's almost like the, what would I say? It's like the resentful barbarians, right? And I know they are really not going to like that term, but I'm watching how the global south is behaving in all this. And honestly, it's just as if, like, you have no right to tell us what to do. Well, look, you guys had a couple thousand years to try civilization. Some of you did all right. A lot of you didn't. And I'm watching this BRICS thing. And look, I've never been a big fan of BRICS. The favelas of Brazil, the way the Uyghurs are used as basically human shop in China. India, you should see how Christians are treated over there. It's an absolute catastrophe. And if you don't know what necklacing is, don't look it up. It'll ruin your day. That's what South Africa's been running since the moment they went anti-apartheid. And so these are the people we're presented as Plan B. This is what Russia offers us as an alternative. This is crap, too. I mean, just saying that, hey, we don't want to be a part of this, it's honestly, it's not that far removed from the Mongol roots. And you know what? Maybe you should listen to a little bit more of Peter and Catherine than you did listen to Ivan the Terrible. But in any case, they're trying to build the coalition of resentment together, and they've invited Argentina to BRICS. And interestingly, they've talked about wanting to bring specific, I think there were 4 countries they wanted to bring in, and let's see if I can remember them off the top of my head. Indonesia was one, Pakistan was one, and the other one, of course I mentioned Argentina, but the other one is Turkey. And Turkey is a country I've been talking. Good to see you, Free Green, by the way. Turkey's the other country I've been talking about a little bit because Turkey seems to be playing both sides against the middle. And all the diplomats are going out there and saying, hey, this will all get worked out, the thing with the Kurds and all that. But maybe it shouldn't get worked out. And that's kind of my point. Yeah, I understand the geography of it. And yeah, I understand the technology. And I understand the military. But I also understand Europe once upon a time understood itself as the point where Islam ended and civilization began. And as a Christian, I still think that way. I'm always going to think that way. And if Europe ever wants to recover itself, it's going to have to start thinking that way. And saying to the Ottoman Empire that, you belong on the other side by Anatolia wouldn't be a bad place to start. My personal perspective, you don't have to share it. But what you do have to realize is that the global south, as they call it, is simmering with resentment, where they're getting money with strings attached from the Chinese left and right so that China can control them by debt like the U.S. did. And they're basically using that as a means to get everyone pissed off and working against the global north. And the thing is, you can try to be nice to them. You can try to think about them. You can have the most open door immigration policy ever. But we're even getting to the point where German prominent thinkers are saying maybe we shouldn't have let so many people in through open borders. And I think it's a good point. I think it's a good question. It's something people need to be asking. And look, I'm not saying something that everyone doesn't already know, but the idea that you have an obligation to have unchecked immigration, when people weren't listening to what's smart. I mean, hell, even God shut the doors on the ark so Noah wouldn't let people in when they went too far without listening. You know what I'm saying? So this is something people should be paying some attention to. Now, as this is ongoing, What I see out there is a lot of people have been talking about the meeting between the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the pending treaty to be voted on May 22nd, whereby essentially the thought is that we are going to give authority over unilaterally as the United States to declare health emergencies worldwide. And this is something that is not abstract. This monkeypox thing, whatever it is floating around very quickly. Now, is this something that was being engineered to spread more effectively in humans? Maybe. Is this something that's being exacerbated by the fact that the people who got inoculated wrecked their own immune systems? Maybe. Will this be used as an excuse for governments around the world to begin shutting down everything again? The rumors that are circulating is yes. Now, I can't give you hard evidence on this, but I listen to way too many prepping channels, and my wife listens to even more than I do, so I get reports on this stuff. And what is getting around bit by bit is a lot of low-level reports that you better be ready for the mask to come back within the next month. You better be ready for those advanced procedures. And it seems like the forecasting of what's going to happen is that there is going to be another series of lockdowns. Now, from what I've read, and I'm not an expert on monkeypox, I'm not going to pretend I am, then the worst case scenario, it can lead to a 10% fatality rate. Now, that came out of rural Africa where there's a whole bunch of other complicating issues. And that's assuming this is whatever they actually have versus the idea of how many people are actually going to get this, what immune capacity, a whole bunch of different variables. But I'm just telling you, I'm giving you a preview of what you might be hearing about. And I've also heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard it. They say it's similar enough to smallpox that if you're about my age or older and you ended up getting, the V for smallpox back in the day, that the thought is that may provide some immunity. I know the government just agreed to spend, I want to say it was $113 million on buying, the antidotes for this. And who knows what's in the antidotes? If you ever see that show they showed on Amazon before they canceled it, Utopia, what literally they did was they launched a disease so people would have to take the cure. Now, Free Green says it's a pandemic to wipe out the elderly. It may very well be. I mean, especially up there in Canada, it's, you see, what was it? I shared a story. I want to say it was Bill C. It was either C7 or C17. I can't remember what it was. But basically, it's a bill to euthanize old people if they want it, if it's deemed that the quality of health isn't there. And you can see, given the way that regime up there runs things, I can't blame people for hiding up there on an ice cap. If you're not on Baffin Island, you're too far south at this point. Honest to damn God. Craziness out there. But the one other thing that occurs to me as a thought during this is, inflation being as terrible as it is, the economy not having the fuel to continue forward, one thing you can do to reduce fuel consumption is stick people at home. And it may be as well that this is solving two birds with one stone, where what they're going to be able to do is shut down the movement and amount of movement of people as a way to bring down the gas prices, to reroute gas between countries, specifically from North America to Europe, as well as to move toward potential prosecution of whatever war is ongoing. And one of the things, there's a lot of talk that, about what's going to happen with Ukraine. And Ukraine will probably apply for NATO, by the way, the moment after, and I'm not saying they'd be approved, but Ukraine would probably want to apply for NATO 5 seconds after peace is declared with Russia, which is why Russia will never declare peace, which is why this is going to be a war that's going to go on and on and on and on and be ugly and nasty. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. We'll also have to keep an eye on the starvation epidemic that is going throughout South Asia. And, you guys have seen the videos out of Sri Lanka. You've heard about some problems in Pakistan. Apparently, Iran is starting to have problems too, and I can't imagine India isn't having problems. Those food supplies that come from the north are not getting to different places. The insane heat that they've had in India has caused certain problems. So keep an eye on this. Global starvation is going to be a story, and when global starvation happens, you're going to expect, as we head into the fall season, and food isn't there, mass migration. So, where Turkey fits into this ends up being a really big story. In fact, I'll tell you right now, and I know this would probably piss a lot of people off in Europe, but you know what they should do? If you are sitting there off of, what's it called, Iderna, the Greeks and the Bulgarians should build a big friggin' wall and actually put a navy to some use to prevent things, because this is something you're going to be seeing coming forward. And look, I'm not saying this to be mean to those countries. It's not about that. But in reality, there's not going to be enough food to go around. There's not going to be enough energy to go around. And it's something we're all going to have to deal with, including in first world countries. In first world countries, we're going to have to get used to third world problems. Like I have to taking care of the damn chickens. So it's something I want you to be aware of. I don't know how it's all going to play out. Now, What else was I reading that I thought was interesting? You guys probably saw, a lot of people were talking about it, but I wanted to mention in case you missed it somehow, that they are starting to reprogram some of the gas machines to be able to display 2 digits before the decimal point. In Washington, there was a story about a gas station that was having over $10 a gallon cost. A lot of people are going to be very upset about that, and deservedly so. This is one of the big problems that we have out there. The fact that, and this is actually going to lead to a lot of unemployment, and it's going to lead to more draw on the welfare state, because what's going to happen is even people who are working jobs, okay, if you're working a job, let's say you're working a job making $15 an hour, but you have to go 30 miles for your commute. Let's pretend your car gets 15 miles to the gallon. Maybe you drive a truck, you live in the country like I do, that you're paying, if you're having to pay $20, $40 an hour, $40 for a job that pays $15 an hour, where a year ago you were paying $20 an hour. Every day you're working, let's say you'll be average 22 days a week in a standard work, or 22 days in a month. You're paying an extra $400 out in fuel. That's hurting you on food. That's hurting you on bills. And mind you, every other object is going up by that much more, as well as your direct energy consumption. People are making a rational economic decision that we're going to see more and more as things get worse. It's an election year. Government's going to promise more, and it's going. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, by the way. But what I'm going to say is the inflation is pricing out your lower jobs and your lower middle jobs. I would say at this point, if you're making less than $20 an hour, in most cases, you probably, absent other reasons, you have to. If you start figuring out the government benefit equation versus the what you're making equation, if you have any transport cost or fuel dependent costs in this, or food, which is a dependent cost we all have, you almost are getting to the point where you might be better to play it on the system. And as this gets worse and worse, and the moral part of it is you're doing the same amount or more and getting less, is people are going to say, the hell with this, I want out of it. So the whole, beyond the great replacement, people staying home, the great resignation, right? We're going to see that because the dollar is going to lose velocity. And remember, I talked to you the other day about economics and finance. Economics is about people and feelings and attitudes. And the attitude is, I'm screwed anyway. I'm not going to contribute to the system. The dollar will break. And that's something we see happening with increasing speed. And it's something you need to be becoming aware of. And I would say to you this, you should start becoming aware of different programs. It's programs that your state may offer, programs that the federal government may offer, not because it's always going to be there or because I want you to be dependent on the system, but because you may want to know these things. I'm literally watching a cockfight in front of me. You guys stop it. Come on. You're fine. I have not that you really need to know this, but I have a lavender Orpington and an olive egger who are just eyeing one another up, you know. And he's such a prick. He ended up having a little frostbite over the winter, so what ended up happening was he ended up having to, he lost part of his comb, and he has like this little tiny comb. I make a joke about being a comb over. Give me 1 second. I got to intervene here. Eddie, if you're going to be a prick, I'm going to deal with you. Come on, get away. No, you get away. You go in there. You're going to come at me? Okay. Go in there. You are being a bad bird. I'm literally on YouTube and you're making me... Give me 1 second. 1 second. Let me sit this down. 1 second. Now, we're going to give you a lesson in what you do when birds act up. Because that happens sometimes. This is Eddie. Say hi to Eddie. Eddie, say hi to the audience. You are being a bad bird. You put his head to the ground, I'm not hurting him, and you show him dominance. Now, are you going to be a good bird, or are you going to be a tough bird? Have you learned? And much like a dog, they become submissive. I'm getting too old for this crap. Anyway, so, things I wouldn't usually share, but I didn't want him beating on the hens. And on the one hand, having a prick around of a bird is not fun. On the other hand, if there was a predator, Eddie would be the first line of defense. So, you win some, you lose some. Okay, so where was I? You guys are probably having some fun here. When do we get a rapid monkeypox test? That's a good question. I know they've begun spending on this. I would imagine, if I had to guess, because they have a whole bunch of other things going on, I would expect things to get funny in July. I think they're going to have to let it flow a little bit, get some different pieces together. But the thing is, people, at least in the United States, I can't speak for other countries, we're going to have a lot of people who are just going to say, the hell with this. We're going to do whatever we want to do. And I understand that, and I'm broadly sympathetic to it. But we don't know what this is. We don't know if it's monkeypox. We don't know if it's some engineered disease that looks like monkeypox. We don't know if this is the immune response failure of those who are getting boosters, because I'm sure they'll have an mRNA shot that has everything in it. And I would just advise caution in general and to look at who's having problems. The fact that this is spreading originally, apparently, in the gay community, to me suggests high likelihood of sexual transmission through maybe blood, other things, hanky-panky hybrid AIDS. Yeah. Did you catch that, Dana? Say hi to Dana anyway. That's her typing. I had to go set Eddie down for a second because he got a little jumpy on. Actually, he went after Big Earn, and then he went after me, which I'm not very keen on, but because I'm actually out here being nice, letting them get their dust bath, and being very friendly, and he's being a prick. So it's the way it always is. He's being fine now. He hasn't gone after everyone else. He's salty and standing over there in the corner. But you know what? He's the one you hear crowing too, by the way. He's like, I still got it. I still got it. Yeah, you know what? I might have gray in my beard, but I'm not that old. I still got it. But yeah, I think with this, you have to remember, they always want to control and constrain us. They want fewer people. Free Green made an excellent point that maybe this is a way to remove some of the vulnerable from the equation. I think that's possible. We'll just have to watch it. We'll have to be smart about it and do that. Now, I had another thought, which is totally disconnected, but I wanted to get this out there because tell people to stop screwing monkeys. Yeah, right. I agree with that. Yeah, You know what? I tell you another thing. The next step after transgenderism is to normalize bestiality. And you don't need to send me the videos. I've already seen them. I know what's happening. This idea that we're not even allowed to discuss what is and is not normal is going to be, pushed beyond any reasonable limit. But I was going to say something. I had a thought because I've been reading all my sort of Puritan books. And honestly, I haven't wanted to talk too much lately because I've been kind of unhappy in terms of there's just so much bad news, and how many times do you even hit you? You know, the stock market's in the tank. And we could go into the cascade failure effects. I think it's kind of known to you at this point. But I was thinking about one thing. One thing I was thinking about was about separation in church and state, because we talk about this as a Pinelander issue. And I was explaining to people on Twitter that Pinelanders are a post-partisan effort to get out of the mess that exists. And one of the things I said in that was, I don't think separation of church and state had it quite right. And I was thinking about this a little more. Anyone who's ever been in the legal system, right? You know there's a difference between civil court and criminal court. And you have criminal courts for certain things like violent crimes, right? For murder, arson, rape, and those are legitimate state functions. But I was thinking about it. The Middle Ages, they separated out ecclesiastical law and civil law, or temporal law, as they would have called it at that time. And what they did was certain things went to an ecclesiastical law. Like, imagine if you had a suit against a corporation about usury. Well, these things really happened, and you could take it somewhere. When there are issues that fit into those gray areas, rather than having armies of lawyers that operate that way, maybe that's the place where you bring back, between places like schooling, like finance, business, actions, malfeasance, stuff like that, fights between people that are civil suit type stuff. Maybe that's where you got to bring it back, because the amorality of hard and fast decisions, usually I find people are better if they have a moral compass and they can talk to one another and they're not constrained by the law. Juries probably would come to better decisions in aggregate than judges and the whole system. And it's a different way of thinking about it. I tell you what, I am very friendly toward the idea of a theocracy, but it's something, I guess, that requires more thought. I don't really have a well-formed thought at this, other than the fact that I am actually really tempted to write and no one would care but like 10 people, 9 of which are in my audience, about the argument for why separation of church and state was such a disaster. And I could prove it. But then they'll be like, oh, well, you'll have these overreaches. And you would. You absolutely would. But I think it's better than the alternative. Where's the happy medium? That's the question people always ask. Um, let's see, other things that I've been thinking about. Getting ready for the sermon on Sunday, and it's going to be a meaningful one. We're going to talk about idolatry and repentance. I've already, based on requests from our parishioners, from you guys in the audience, we're going to talk about that, and it has me thinking a lot over the week of my own life. One of the things that bothers me most about this world is that I feel like I live under constant temptation to be a person I don't want to be, because I feel like that's what's needed to survive in this world. And even though we've pulled out to the wilderness as best we can, I mean, there's still so many ties that just like puppet strings that hold us to this world of things we wouldn't necessarily want. I mean, Dana and I have talked about it quite a bit. And it's just, I wish it could be easier. I honestly wish we could just go in the woods. And I'd be, if we could have at least a solid starting point, I'd be willing to say, you know what, we make it, we don't make it, we have some friends, we have some family. I read these stories of these people who went to frontiers and they just gave it up. And it's just, and I think that's ultimately all we can do, And I'll tell you one of the things that was funny, and I said this to my wife, and this is how I look at it. Sometimes it's the things we love that hurt us the most. It's like our technologies or all the things, all the bad habits that we'd fight to keep, even though we know we're bad. Like everyone knows I'm the fat kid, right? I'm not nearly as fat as I pretend I am on this channel because I used to be, really, but it's just like giving up those things. We know where they're bad. We don't want them, and we do. And we use them for stress relief, and we use them to fit in. We get the money. We get the... It just... I don't know. Does anyone else... Do any of you understand what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say that so often, the things we do to survive this world is the things we do that destroy what we care about most about ourselves. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And, sometimes it goes so far, especially if you think of it in terms of sin like I do, you start to think of it as moral peril that you have to live with as the price of being in this world. And as things get worse and we are maneuvered and engineered into conflicts against people we really don't want to fight against, how much worse is that going to get? And how much is that going to change us? And look, I'm not here to say don't seek your own self-defense. I'm not here to say people don't need to be held to account for their choices. I'm saying that even if you do exactly what you think is morally right, and even if it is morally right, you're still going to bear a terrible burden for that. Ask any soldier who went to war defending his country how that was worth it. Even in just wars, you're not the same. We weren't meant to live like this. And when you start to realize how far and how deeply we've been dragged into our own degradation, it is both astounding, and you go through stages, right? You go through a stage of anger, and you go through these occasional stages of energy. You're going to do so much. You're going to go out there. You're going to attack. You're going to change everything. I mean, I look at my own early 30s that way, in mid-30s, really. And then after a while, you're like, people don't even want it. They're just going to go with it. What the hell's the difference? And I think that a lot. That's why I'm sitting out here with my chickens out in the middle of nowhere, Maine. I'm just like, what can we do? We've tried. We've warned people. At this point, how many books have I written? Because Dana made a suggestion where I should talk about, some of the dark concepts underwriting certain political movements. And it'd be a brilliant book. I mean, she's smart. It would be very good. But, like, how many ways can I tell people what not to do? How many times can I tell people what's bad for them? I wish people would care as much about what was good for them as they would about avoiding what's bad, And I know good is harder. I get it. It's more controversial. We fight over it more, but I don't know. Maybe I should just stop and smell the dandelions instead. They're pretty. Look at them in the little yard, all the little dandelions. Just what I'm looking at across a bunch of them. Just a nice day, something good to deal with. So, one other thing, just to give you some warnings, things happening around the country. We got those derechos coming through again, basically land hurricanes that are going to screw over all the crops in the Midwest just on time. I know we're supposed to have terrible heat waves and drought this weekend. It's going to be like 100 degrees in D.C. So if you're anywhere from Boston south, expect to get fried like an egg. I guess that's what you get for being a flatlander, right? But that's going to happen, and then we'll have some wind and some more severe weather, so that's something to be aware of. One thing that they're predicting is that there's going to be rolling blackouts. Well, yeah, it does mean that there's going to be no more free soda because it's the wrong direction, right? I mean, that's what it is. But yeah, no, they have something up here. I'll just tell you. They have a club up here called the Sip and Save Club. We pay $6, and every day when you go to the gas station, if you go by the gas station, you can get a cup of coffee, an icy, or a soda. Now, we all know I don't need any of those things. But It happens. And it's something I am giving up, which I'm giving up because certain things I'm going to be doing, just the geography doesn't make sense. Let's just leave it at that, where it used to, because I've changed certain habits in light of the fact that gas isn't available as much. And so now I'm traveling less. That's okay. I don't mind not traveling. I go travel into my library, which some of you have seen in my evening chats, and I travel in there. And then the only thing I try to do is not get drawn out, by by other interests, by your TV, or sometimes the wife likes to talk to other things. So we'll see how that all goes. But yeah, it's and of course it's a loss leader gimmick, right? Because its job is to get you to the gas station, so you pay the ridiculous amount a gallon. Like I can tell you, in town here, I saw it's over $4.60 now, and it's going to $5 unless they do something to stop the economy. Speaking of, I'm glad you mentioned that. There was a video we were watching. I don't know who it was on. Dana might know. She might remind me. They had the CEO of Pilot Flying J. That's the big truck stop place in the U.S. If you've ever traveled, and he was talking about Union Pacific Railroad, and apparently they get a lot of their gas through Union Pacific that ultimately gets there, and Union Pacific has told them to expect that they're going to have to deal with a 27% reduction in the amount of gas they're getting, and Flying J and Pilot saying if you do that, you're going to wreck the trucking industry more than it's already messed up. And they were explaining that if anything, they need more because what they've been doing is taking some of their gas and an emergency basis, getting it to other stations, especially the diesel, because they're one of the biggest distributors of DEF, the high efficiency diesel, or whatever it stands for. There's I forget the exact letters, but what they're telegraphing is that and I don't know why this should be a problem with the railroad industry, except that they don't have supply. That's the only thing that would make any sense, or that this is artificially being induced. But apparently, the backstory on it is that the rail shortage, that the rail carriers are being asked to distribute the diesel differently, such that it's going to make the trucking crisis even worse. Now, the government has released certain amount of energy from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help with that, but ultimately that's a stopgap. And I can't help but think a lot of this is coming out of the basically the quiet move towards war. A story some of you may have missed, I shared it in the Telegram group. The United States Army is creating a new military division. The 11th Airborne Division, you guys are familiar with the 82nd and the 101st, but the 11th Airborne Division is going to be coming online here very shortly, based out of Alaska, specifically geared toward Arctic warfare operations. And if you look at a map of a globe, or if you think it's flat and you think the North Pole is the center of it, that's fine too. You'll find that northern Russia and Alaska and northern Canada are not so far from one another. And there has been an immense amount of goods, material, men's, and whatnot moving into those areas in preparation for conflict. Of course, the expectation is a warmer world, that those transit routes are going to be used much more frequently, and we'll see. But I did think it was worth mentioning that we are now, that's not something that hasn't happened in decades, from what I was reading. It didn't give me the exact date in the article, but this is something that I think is a very big thing that we need to keep an eye on and be aware of. One other thing you're not aware of, potentially, is the European Union. We talk occasionally about how the Europeans are in the process toward federalization that's happening here. I forget the exact name for the entity, but basically, the European Union has begun funding their own version of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, as a way of giving technology advantages to their own people. In a lot of ways, just like when we watched that Army PsyOps video, that's going to be your tail that wags the dog. And whether you think of that as a skunk works, where certain programs are used to bring things out or farm out to corporations where money gets kicked back between the right families, or whether you think of that as just a version of how you would put together a state that would be more connected, that is something that's coming down the line. So I think you should be very aware of that, and certainly something I would be concerned about moving forward. Other news that we're hearing, rumors that Croatia might not be too keen on Finland and Sweden coming in. They're not going to do anything to stop that. Rumors that Kosovo wants to apply to NATO. Thought is maybe Turkey would like that. I mean, they're Muslim. I don't know. Serbia certainly wouldn't, but no one's going to care what Serbia thinks because Serbia is seen sort of as a thorn in the side. That it's really not fair to the Serbs, but the Balkans are a mess. The Balkans haven't been. The last time the Balkans were good, there was an emperor sitting in Constantinople who practiced the Orthodox faith. That region's got problems, and it's unfortunate that maybe this is probably the Hungarians' fault anyway. If what's his name? If John Hunyadi had done better when he was in charge there, his successors, maybe it would be a better situation. Not that you guys know 12th century, 13th century history there, but when Hungary fell apart, the Balkans basically ended up being a tit for tat game between Austria, I should say the Habsburgs, it's more accurate, and the Ottoman Empire, and a lot of the problems came from that point onward. Yeah. Anyway, so the Balkans are still a mess. The Balkans will always be a mess, and God knows, as long as those people all live there, the Balkans will always be a mess. And I say that with love to my friends because I got quite a few, especially one in Croatia. So good luck to you guys there. Hopefully you don't have another Sarajevo episode come out of this, but it's not impossible. We may see. We also may see, the usual noise going between Israel and Iran. Interesting that America's getting a whole bunch of troops involved, at least some small troops involved in Somalia. Not really sure what that's about. Didn't really do the research on it, but I did see the story. If there's anything interesting there, anything, throw something in the comments. Certainly worth keeping an eye on, maybe for strategic implications coming out of the Gulf and to the Red Sea there. I think that's another possibility. Beyond that, all I can say to you is that inflation continues to roll. We're going to have to keep an eye on price increases, which are everyone who's broadcasting this. And I've had people ask me, Tom, what should I be watching for? What you should be watching for is that those second tier effects, a lot of people who are involved in manufacturing, repair, redistribution can't get the parts. So if you get something, get it now. Get yourself some spare parts, have what you need on hand, and I would say if you can go low tech with replaceable parts, think about this, that can be grabbed, that are in an easy way that you can use. That's very smart. We're going to be, and who knows, maybe Dana and I will share some things with you. She's still recovering from her fall. Thank you for those of you who've been praying and sending your kind wishes for that. We appreciate that very much. Then we'll do the unboxing of our little tiny washing machine that we're due. And as June and July come along, if we're still here and things are going okay, one of the things that we can do is we're definitely looking forward to maybe sharing some more ideas for things we're going to do. Look at ways to be smart about having alternate needs. You need to be thinking about your winter survival problems, about heating, about fueling, about that, getting extra fuel on hand, going to other sources, going to things that can use multiple sources. Like literally, I had to spend about half hour this week learning the difference between coal heat and wood heat and the advantages and disadvantages of them. Dana said to mention the scrap metal problem. I know we watched a video. We were watching. Was it Southern Prepper who did that? Southern Prepper 1. Anyway, but yeah, people are having a hard time finding scrap metal. People are finding a hard time finding different materials that can be used. The one thing I am projecting that if the fuel problem doesn't worsen too much, I do think the price of construction materials will be going down in terms of its inflate. How should I put it? I think the actual the demand for construction materials, I believe, is going to go down sharply. I don't know how much that will be reflected at the retail price point, only because inflation being such as it is, prices are always slower to go down than they are to go back up once they've gone up. But I hope that there is an opportunity for people who are looking to do that to take advantage of those materials, and to get the machines you need. And just remember, look for hand crank machines, look for things that are simple, can be mechanically repaired, and look for the sort of lubricants. If Dana was here, she'd say WD-40, or if you use a silicone lubricant, whatever you use, whatever your preferred choice is, or what's suitable for your purposes. Having those things on hand will save you a lot of pain and grief. And it might not be a bad idea to have some repair books or print out some materials about how to repair the things you have. Go through your house. If there's something you can't live without and you only have one of them, then either find a simpler way to do it, get a second one of them, get a third one of them, whatever you need to do to make sure that you're safe and you're prepared and coming to a simpler solution. A lot of people are saying make a point to grow your own food. I agree with that. I think it's a good decision, but understand this is the year if it's year one in your growing season, you're going to screw it up, and it's going to be a hard year to grow with things around. I mean, the advice I give, and I know this one's counter to other preppers, and it runs counter to the practice I've had the last few years, but the urgency of the moment being such as it is, get the food itself. Do a little bit of growth, something that's simple and straightforward. Potatoes is something I recommend. It's pretty hard to screw up potatoes. I mean, at least up here, if you're in a different environment, of course. Apple trees, if you want to put a couple of those in your ground, if you have some space and territory. Um, I love our chickens, but man, it's not for the faint of heart. It really isn't. But if you want to go all in, and you know what, find friends to do the task with, because it's a hard life and it's an exhausting life. If you're not used to, if you're used to suburban life. I mean, I was even complaining about this today. Every day I deal with an hour and a half of on the home chores that are just daily chores. And the thing is, on an average day, it's not so bad. But when you do it every day, when you're sick and you have to do those things, what ends up happening is you don't ever really fully recover. You're just waiting for a break, for a vacation that's never going to come. And on the other hand, it's the advantage of it. You don't have to be held to account when other people can't go out to get eggs. You know what? I can just I can go downstairs and go grab some, or, trade with my neighbors, the illicit egg trade. Probably say, you shouldn't talk to them. Well, I'm going to do what I want to do. That's how that's going to be. But certainly being smart about that and having those things on hand if you can do certain things. Damaged cars have everything you need for power, heat, plumbing, growing systems, and shelter. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing. But the thing about it is that's hard is, and this is why living in the country is a good thing. In cities, in suburbs, even if you think people are prepped, you can be a prepper in a suburb, but you can't do it unless you have a manicured lawn. Like I have a friend, someone who listens to this program, who would even say, he would love to have a chicken coop outside, and they'd run him out from his housing association if he did it. And it's lousy and it's crappy. And this is how we live. We live in this insane consumption society where we treat grass as a necessity. Grass is pretty damn useless for a human. I mean, you could graze it. The chickens eat some of it. They like it. They're picking at some dandelion. But I mean, unless you got a cow in your yard, it's kind of crazy how we think about how our land usage is. So if you can put perennial, one thing I do like, you can put in perennial shrubs. I mean, things you should look at. If you're up north, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, good choices. If you're further south, okay, go with grapes. Go with basic trees. Apples are good. And yeah, if you're going with meats, rabbit is the easiest, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's the simplest to do and it's the fastest to get to there. Chickens you can do well with. They're not too hard. Ducks are dicks. And then you can get into other birds. Quail are smaller. You don't get as much from them, but the eggs are good. Turkeys, and then into weird birds and other weird animals. And then you get into heavier things, which most of you, but at this point, you shouldn't be coming to me for advice about what to do with dairy animals. Not that they're not good. They're quite good, but that's a whole different world. I could tell you a little bit about goats, but honestly, I wouldn't want to go too deep into that. And if you're not already there doing it and you don't have a lot of help, that's something I would be careful with. Although, if one point, since Dana mentioned it, with the quail eggs and allergy sufferers, I would also add to that's the advantage of goats versus cattle. That if you have lactose issues, the benefit is you're not as likely to have the same problems that you have. Hey, get out of there! Don't eat the elderberry, Kate. Anyway, I was going to say that you would have less problems with the goat milk. The problem with goat milk, though, is if you ever know, I mean, this is real technical, but milk that comes from cows gets separated between heavier and lighter components. Think of how you have cream versus milk at the market, and that using that cream is one of the key elements to making things like buttermilk, to making butter, to making some of the products you're used to. So if you're trying to make those products conversely from goats, you won't have the same ease of ability. Not that it can't be done, but the process is different, longer, and more complex, and it doesn't really work as well. Whereas cattle does. So if that's something that you're concerned about, you can't just take butter from. You just can't take milk from a cow, put it in a churn, or milk from a goat and churn it the way you would from a cow, where you separate out the different components. So, just little things you need to be aware of. The other thing is, even if you don't think you want to do any of these things, please be aware of that. Especially if it's one of the things, since Dana says goat milk can be a breast milk alternative if need be. Having the colostrum, which is the early milk, is really good for that. But one thing I would recommend to you is also get kits for butchering if you don't have one, for butchering small game, birds, deer, and anything up to something really large, and for fishing as well if you're going to go down that route. Certainly things worth considering. Okay, the other thing I would say is you should be doing now is get fuel for winter if you can. We're going to be making our moves in that way next month. We had a very hard winter. Those of you know our furnace broke, and despite many, 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 many hours of effort to fix it, we did not, which caused us more hardships, some financial, some health-wise. This winter, we're not going to deal with those same mistakes. We, having survived it once, don't feel like tempting fate a second time. And what I would suggest so strongly to each of you, wherever you live, whether you live in a little town or whatever, do have a secondary heating solution in case you get to the point where your existing heating source, if it is a fuel-based heating source, whether it's something you buy like we do here in New England, usually buy oil for oil furnaces, or wherever you live in much of the other country where natural gas you count on being delivered to you, expect, because they're already saying this is something we should see, expect we're going to see rationing, expect we're going to see other problems where it's going to be, come on, out of there. You guys, I'm going to put you back in as soon as I get off there. Anyway, expect to see rationing, expect to see versions like that. So what you're going to want to do is have some solution you feel good about that you can use that will you make use of readily available local fuel sources. And what that means is very different depending upon where you are. If you're in a city, that's harder. I don't have an easy answer for you. Invest heavily in insulation and ways to keep warm using buildings, bricks, and whatever you have. If you're in a warmer area where that's not such a problem, a simple solution not a lot of people think about, have a ton of heavy blankets. And if you're used to having mini blinds, get some heavy drapes, put them in there. Free Green can probably give you more things: compost, pipe heating, wood gas, compressor, and oil, fat, methane tanks. That's probably beyond what most people can do. But if you check out his site, if he wants to put it up, he probably has solutions about how to do all that. I'm a simple dude. I'm just hoping to be able to burn some wood. And that's something worth taking a look at. Get away from there. Get away from there. Okay, so those are my pieces of advice for you for today. I don't know if there's anything else I want to cover. I think I made the points I want to. I do want to wish you all a very happy weekend, and Lord's blessing be upon all of you. I will be back on Sunday with a show, and then we'll see what next week looks like. I got some things going on, so shows that come up will probably be in this late morning, early afternoon range for the time being. There's reasons why that works well for me, and we'll just have to see how that works. Hopefully it works well for you. The numbers are up, so apparently it does something good. If you enjoyed the show, or if you didn't enjoy the show, hit like anyway. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for those who support us. Check out the book on Amazon, Surviving the Fall of America. The Venmo, CBC, PRV, P.O. Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine 04739. And I would just say, Heavenly Father, just watch out for all of us, and help us, lead us in your vision, because this world's leading us astray, and we need you more than ever, Father. So in Jesus' mighty name, I pray that for us all. I'm Tom Kaczynski, for my wife Dana, and for a flock of unruly chickens that are about to get it. God bless, and you guys have a good day. Pinelander out.